Welcome into a week 14 episode of the Giants Hangout brought to you by Crestron. I'm Madelyn Burke, joined as always by Russ Salzberg and Matt Citak. And guys, Giant season obviously has not gone the way that they would have hoped going into the year. Big news coming out of week 13. Of course, Dexter Lawrence, Theo Johnson placed on season-ending IR. This is going to change a lot for the way that this team looks in these final five games. But, starting with what we saw in this Dallas game, Russ, what are the big takeaways that you want to make, the points that you want to make off of that one?
Look, Madeline, to me, you've heard this said before. The Giants just need a win by any means necessary. They need something to feel good about. Everybody, you hear all the discussion, want to give something to fans, something to feel good about. Trust me, the players need something to feel good about. It's yeah, you hear the old cliche, okay, now it's time to play for pride. So they have to play for pride. You just mentioned Dexter, you mentioned Theo. I mean, they've had a beleaguered season as it is. Now you're losing, not arguably, you're losing your best defensive player, one of your leaders on the team. So it's kind of a culmination to what has gone wrong. So I mean, my takeaway, listen, what happened in the Dallas game? Well, to me, we saw more missed tackles. We saw more quarterback sacks. We saw more quarterback hits. We saw more drop passes. We need to see improvement across the board on all of that stuff. That's what we need to see, really. I don't know what else to say. You just need improvement across the board. I mean, I was surprised at some of the things I saw in the Dallas game. The tackling just, I scratch my head on it. That has been a problem, and it continues to be a problem. They get to the guy, they get to their opponent. They're just not putting the opponent down on the ground. It's tackle football. You got to do better than that.
Yeah, for me, I would say the biggest takeaway, which, been a common theme just about all season, is the run defense. I mean, the Cowboys ran for 122 yards against the Giants on Thanksgiving. Rico Dowdle had the best game of his career. I feel like it's not the first time we've said an opposing running back has had their best game of their career against the Giants this season. But Dowdle ran for 112 yards, averaged over 5 yards a carry, scored a touchdown, had a couple of receptions in the passing game too. Like it's a continuation of what we saw from the Buccaneers game a week before with Bucky Irving and even going to Chuba Hubbard back in the Munich game and earlier in the season. I mean, the run defense has struggled, and part of it is what Russ was just talking about with the missed tackles. I mean, the Giants are top 10 in the league in missed tackles this season. It's tough to slow down opponents' rushing games when you're missing tackles and not making plays. Now, I don't want to highlight anything, too positive on a loss, but I will say the one thing that was nice to see was that this team fought back. I mean, they were down 3 scores in the second half, and they could have just mailed it in at that point, given how the season's going. I will give them credit that they continue to fight. They made it into a one possession game with, if they had stopped that last Brandon Cooks reception, they would have gotten the ball back with the chance to tie or win the game. So again, not focusing too much on the positives, but considering the team's record and how the season has gone, the fact that they were still there fighting until the very last second, that is good to see. And it shows that the locker room, still together and is still trying to win games as a team and, fight together as a unit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's tough though, seeing like those situations happen so frequently for the Giants. If this had gone differently, if that had gone differently, and to quote an expression that our dear friend and colleague Amani Toomer uses frequently, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, and every day would be Christmas, right? Like we have so many of those with this team, and I know the frustration is there, but like you said, Matt, the locker room is still sticking together, and the adversity goes well beyond just the losses. I mean, the fact that you start the season with five captains, three of them are gone. Now, Bobby Okereke and Casey Kreider are the only team captains, the only guys with the C on their chest still available for this Giants team. And, earlier this week, Kayvon Thibodeau talked about this, saying like, hey, it's meritocracy in this locker room. The more you produce, the more your voice matters. And the more, we need other guys to step up and step into these leadership roles down the stretch of the season. And with that run defense being such a struggle for this Giants team, losing Dexter Lawrence is going to be even more pivotal when you look at the way, you've got the Saints coming to town, then you've got the Ravens in a couple of weeks, and Lamar Jackson's mom's already getting in his ear saying, I need you to run more. So there's going to be things that are happening. And, Kayvon's even talked about, hey, with Dexter out, teams are going to change the way they approach us now. They're going to change that strategy because they no longer have to double team Dexter Lawrence in the middle. And there's just going to be such a different situation, different approach for what this defense is seeing moving forward, especially in the run game, an area where they've already struggled. I'm curious how they adjust.
Well, you know what? That's a fair point. And Matt did bring up an excellent point that they didn't quit in the last game. And I don't expect them to quit.
Right.
Yeah, they've had bad games and we've seen them. Okay. But when you hear like the players say, or the coaches say, no, it wasn't lack of effort. It was lack of execution. And, listen, we're at practice. We see what goes on. We're in that locker room. I know I repeat myself, but that's a together locker room. They're not a bunch of guys sitting in cliques, just going about their business. So I don't think they're going to quit. But now the question is, you just lost a Dexter, you lost Theo. You can only fight so much. You need the guns and the artillery to fight with. That's what, they're a little bit hamstrung right now. And listen, everybody's got to see. I don't know that they're playing for jobs, but there's 5 games to go. The coaches, the general manager, Dave's, Joe Shane, they're looking for information right now. Who is going to be part of the solution or who's going to be moved? They got to find those answers out too. And they got 5 games to do it. So it's interesting. It's going to be a very interesting 5 games coming up. And as you just said, none of the games are a walk in the, listen, when you only have 2 wins, no team is a walk in the park for you, but you got some tough teams on the schedule moving forward.
Yeah. And, another thing that these players, coaches, everyone is going out there and playing for in these last 5 games is pride. I mean, no player or team in any sport wants to end their season with 12 consecutive losses, which is, if the Giants were to lose out, that's what it would be to. These guys don't want to be a part of that. They don't want to go down as having the worst record in football this year. They're going out there trying to win football games and break out of this funk. Obviously, the Giants are now eliminated from the playoffs, so they're not playing for a playoff position. But as Russ, as you mentioned, there's still a lot on the line for a lot of these guys.
Tons.
These are people playing, for their potential futures, whether it's with the Giants, with another team. Like, you have to put good tape out there if you're a player, regardless of your contract situation. So there's still a lot on the line for this team to play for. And I mean, you mentioned, Russ, also the 5 upcoming opponents that the Giants have to close the season. Some of those are tough matchups. And I would say that of the 5, this one against the Saints on Sunday is one of the more winnable matchups. Of course, the Giants are probably going to be, underdogs in all 5 of these games, given how the season has gone. But this is one of the games on the remaining schedule that is there for the taking. The Giants are going to have to bring their A game. And, with guys like Dexter Lawrence now gone, you're going to need your other defensive linemen to step up. I mean, you might not be getting the same pass rush production from the interior with Dex gone, but this is a chance for guys like Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, who have been, solid, good, but maybe not that great level. Here's a chance for them to raise their game and get to that great level to help make up for the production that the Giants are going to be missing with Dexter now gone for the year.
I will
To your
say,
point,
excuse me, man, one second. I will say this about Burns. For a guy who's in his first year, I see him in the locker room, I see him on the field, and I see his effort week in and week out. He's what I call a man's man. He comes to play. He's got the right attitude. He hasn't he's been ticked off with the losses. He's been angry and upset, and he's supposed to be. But he's one of those guys that you kind of talk about that doesn't quit and fights to the end. And I mean, he's a leader. For a first-year guy, he's a leader in that.
Well, first year with the Giants.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, first year with the Giants. He is a leader. So, I think, yeah, it's You know what that old saying you hear coaches say all the time, next man up? It's next man up, guys. There ain't no excuses. You know,
Well,
you got
and
to play
also
the
too,
game.
we've been around the Giants for many years, varying degrees between the three of us. But, watching each year, there have been so many moments in which the games that you think, oh, the Giants are going to win this one, don't go their way. And the games and you think, oh, they have no shot, do. I mean, in this season alone, going out to Seattle and getting a win on the road with no pre-snap penalties in front of the 12s, that's a game that you would think that the way that this team has been playing this season would be a tough one, but they pulled it off. Or, several years ago at MetLife, when you've got the San Francisco 49ers visiting and every single player on that team was injured. They had Nick Mullins starting at quarterback, and it was like an IR list of a roster. And that team beat a healthy Giants squad at MetLife, so things can go both ways. Anytime you're on the field, you've got a shot. But to your point, Matt, this Sunday especially, you've got to really hone in and take advantage of the opportunity. Yes, I mean, the Saints have a solid run game, and that's a weakness point for this Giants team, but they also are prone to fumble the ball and to give away the ball. And that is an area in which the Giants really need to capitalize, because they are now on a league record streak of 11 games without a takeaway on defense. And that's not a streak that you want to have on your team, when you're looking back on how did this season go. You want to be able to get turnovers, you want to be able to capitalize off of that kind of thing. And also, every time you're on the field, you're making a name for yourself. You're putting out tape, not just for the team, but also, this is who I am as a professional football player. This is who I want to be known as. This is the effort that I want to give, even if mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, even if, however this may turn out, you're still playing in the National Football League, which is a privilege that not a lot of people get to say that they have.
Listen, you're 100% correct. I mean, that's exactly it's go ahead and just do your jobs, be professionals, go out. Again, we're repeating it, show some pride, but that's what they got to do. Listen, you talk about we've been here in various degrees. I've been covering this team with this team since 1988, and I'm being frank and honest.
And
This
that's the year I was born.
okay. If I tell you, Matt, this season has been the biggest head scratcher that I have seen since all my time covering it. I didn't expect the Giants even to be a playoff team this year, but I didn't expect this. I'm dumbfounded by it. I've seen the personnel. I've spoken to the guys. Between injuries and quarterback situation and this and that, it dumbfounds me. I'm telling you, it's the biggest head scratcher I've seen since I've been covering the team since 1988. I mean, if somebody would have told me that this team was going to be 2-10 now, I would have bet the house that you were nuts. But it is what it is. As Parcells always said, you are what your record says you are. And 2-10
Right.
is what the Giants are.
Well, and then this Sunday at MetLife, they've got a chance to increase that record. So, Matt, when you're looking at this matchup, obviously we all know the importance of just getting a win for morale. But what is your point of emphasis when you look at Giants Saints Sunday at MetLife?
Yeah, so I have two, and they're both on the defensive side of the ball. For starters, and this is not going to come as a surprise, they got to focus on slowing down Alvin Kamara and the Saints' rushing attack. I mean, through the first 12 games of the season, the Saints rank in the top 10 on just about every rushing metric. This is a team that wants to run the football. And, they did suffer a big blow this past Sunday as they lost Taysom Hill. Their versatile, Swiss Army knife offensive weapon is done for the season with a torn ACL. And, when they get close to the goal line, chances are Taysom Hill was going to get the ball and try to punch it in from inside the 5. So that part you don't have to worry about. But Alvin Kamara, who another one of those, quote unquote, aging veteran running backs who is having just another career year, is looking fantastic, looking like a, 25-year-old version of himself. Trying to contain him and slow him down, you're not going to take him out of the game completely, but if you can just limit him and, don't let him bust out a big 50, 60-yard rushing touchdown, that will help you considerably slow down this Saints offense. So that's one. And the second thing is you cannot give up the big explosive plays in the passing game on defense. I mean, this is going to be a not great stat for the Giants, but so far this season, they have allowed a completion percentage of 69.2% on deep passes, which is 20 or more air yards down the field. And according to Next Gen Stats, this is the highest since at least 2016 of any team across the NFL. And to put it into perspective, no other team has finished with a completion percentage above 60% on deep passes in that same span. And the Giants are at nearly 70%. So not letting the Saints pass catchers, and I'm most specifically talking about Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who seems to only get 1 or 2 catches a game, but they typically go for 40, 50, 60, 70 yards. Do not let him get behind the defense and catch one of those 70-yard bombs from Derek Carr, because you know that Derek Carr is going to be looking for that big play after establishing the run. So stopping Kamara, limiting MVS and those deep shots. If the Giants can do that, I like their chances to win on Sunday.
Well, I'm going to go on the other side of the line, Matt. And all what you say is true, but I'm going to go on the offensive side and say no giveaways. Okay, no giveaways. That bites them on the where every time. You can't win games by giving the ball away. You can't put it on the ground. You don't want to get intercepted. That's what they need. They're not strong enough. The Giants aren't strong enough. We all know that, to overcome those miscues. So they got to take care of business on the offensive side of the ball.
Right. And especially too, at this point in the week, as we're recording this episode, Brian Daboll has yet to name a starting quarterback. Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock both threw some passes in Monday's walkthrough with the team. It hasn't yet been announced which direction they're going to go. And one of the things about Drew Lock's game that I think kind of created some hesitancy going to him as starting quarterback was his proclivity to throw an interception or two. And he has a great arm, is not afraid to sling it, but with that comes a little bit of a risk of a turnover. And we've seen it from Drew, we've seen it from Tyrone Tracy recent weeks. And it's just like you said, that you got to hold on to the ball when you got it, because you want every possession to end with a kick, either a field goal, a PAT, or at the very least a punt. But when you're handing the ball to the other team, especially on a short field, like you said, the team is not strong enough to kind of overcome that kind of a deficit.
Protect the rock by any means necessary. And
high
then,
and tight.
Yep.
Just, 2 hands if you need it, like me when I was 5 with a cup of milk, all that kind of stuff. But we'll see, and either way, we are privileged to be covering this team as they get back to MetLife Stadium on Sunday. Giants Saints week 14, but that's a wrap for our week 14 Giants Hangout, brought to you by Crestron with Matt Citak and Russ Salzberg. I'm Madelyn Burke. We'll see you next time.